Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our very special guest in conversation with Gila and myself this Thursday evening. We even had fireworks going off in the honor of our special guest outside our window. We're delighted to welcome the Right Honourable Theresa Villiers, who is RMP of Chipping Barnet. We are honoured and delighted to be able to welcome her, somebody who is a staunch supporter and loyal friend to the whole community and to the faith communities. I can only speak personally in particular. And it's an opportunity, as always, for us to be able to thank her and to show our appreciation and gratitude for everything that you do for our community and for everyone. We know it is an exceptionally challenging time for communal leaders, huge pressures and responsibilities, and we appreciate tremendously, Theresa, you taking time out to be with us this evening. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you, and my apologies to all the viewers and listeners. We've had some technical setup issues, but hopefully you'll be able to see and hear the three of us during this interview. So I'm going to kick off with a question, Theresa, if that's okay. Do you possibly want to share a few of the challenges that you have been dealing with during COVID?
I think the biggest challenge and task really has been trying to respond to the requests for help from constituents. They sort of, in particular during the first lockdown, there were many queries about what the rules meant, what you could do, what you couldn't do. And of course, sadly, the other big set of queries for me were from people whose businesses and jobs are just completely shut down, and they were desperate to get access to the government support scheme. So trying to navigate them through those was a big challenge. And of course, unfortunately, there's a category of people who just fell outside all those help schemes.
Correct.
And I'm, to be honest, still working on trying to find them help. And this actually, those categories of people were mentioned in Parliament today. So I think those, in a lot of ways, my sort of life has changed a lot. There's much that I would normally be doing that I can no longer do, but the space has been filled with that vast volume of people needing help from me as the Member of Parliament.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And I know how much it is appreciated, just knowing that there is somebody there who's a listening ear and who is trying to do everything to support our community. There's been a lot of discussion and toing and froing in the last week, as you're well aware, Theresa, about whether places of worship should be included or excluded in the current lockdown. I was wondering, what exactly is your position? What's your thoughts on the matter?
I really wish we hadn't have had to go into this second lockdown. I was one of the MPs who voted for it, but with a very, very heavy heart. I really wish there were alternatives. I mean, and obviously a matter of particular regret is the ban on collective acts of worship. It's incredibly hard on everyone with a faith, and this is, I think, one of the crucial reasons why this lockdown really has to be just these 4 weeks. I think it's intolerable to put these kind of restrictions on people's freedom to express their faith any longer than absolutely necessary. So I wish these arrangements were not in place, because it is a pretty intolerable sort of restraint on people's normal everyday freedom. But given what the advice was from the experts, and some of the numbers are pretty scary, and there's lots of speculation about which models are correct, but there are a finite number of beds in the National Health Service, and if we hadn't have taken further action to suppress the spread of the virus, then we would by basically within a few weeks, we would have seen the NHS fill up, and that would lead to the situation where we were having to ask doctors to decide who lived or died because the NHS couldn't give the care to everyone who needs it. So in those circumstances, the lockdown became justified, albeit with these really frustrating and pretty sort of unacceptable aspects to it, including the ban on religious worship.
Yeah, we understand. We understand.
Yeah. But thank you for explaining that. Many people were disappointed about the fact that you voted against the motion to extend a free school meals program over the holidays. And many in the community signed a petition against this measure. Can I ask you to share with the community your thoughts about that?
Yes, it's. I mean, what we're all agreed on is that it should never be the case that children are left hungry, and I'm determined that that should never happen, as is the Prime Minister and the government. So the only debate is about what is the best way to do that. I mean, for 100 years or so, the free school meal principle has focused on the school day, on helping children learn and supporting disadvantaged, vulnerable children in the school holidays has been the responsibility of the welfare system.
Correct.
And I know that the government is essentially, our welfare system is predominantly geared to support families and children. And we've allocated 63 million for extra support in the school holidays. And I think these financial programs, which are directed at the most vulnerable families, are the more effective way to tackle this problem and ensure that children are fully looked after. But I do recognise the public concern felt about it, and I'm continuing to look at this. I know ministers are, but I still believe that there are better ways to support vulnerable families and vulnerable children than necessarily food vouchers during the school holidays.
Right. As long as they get the support, as long as you keep looking at it.
Yes, well, they must get the support. They are getting the support. But if there's more that can and should be done, then I will keep up the pressure for that to happen.
Great, thank you.
We want to move on, I think, to a different area, and that is one, in fact, which I think I had the most emails. I don't know if it's the same. You'll tell me afterwards if this has filled up your inbox. But the congestion charge, the proposed expansion of the congestion charge, including the North Circular, is something which I'm sure you've received emails, because I've received copies of the emails that were sent to you. Is something of deep, deep, deep concern to the community. In the fear and the concern is that it's going to literally split and divide families and communities. I know that it has, for the time being, been postponed or been stopped in its tracks. Can you give our viewers and listeners any type of reassurance that this is not going to rear its ugly head in 6 months' time?
I hope I can. I mean, ultimately, that's a decision down to the Mayor of London. But he's not put forward a proposal to do that. The government is not asking him to do that. And the reality actually is it would be wholly impractical to do that, because the congestion charge is supposed to be about preventing congestion. So if you make it cover an area, between the North and South Circular, basically all the residents within that area are driving around anyway, and you completely lose the effect of the congestion charge, which is to discourage driving in a particular part of the city. Right. So actually, were it to be extended in that way to the North Circular, it would no longer be about congestion, it would just be a tax, basically. And right. I agree that it would divide communities. So I would be very much against any extension to the North Circular. And But as I say, I can provide the reassurance that for the moment, thankfully, no one is proposing that that should happen. The mayor isn't, the government isn't. It is true that the TfL bailout lasts only until March. And it is also true that the mayor will have to look at running things more efficiently than he has in the past. The reality is that, for example, Crossrail is really late, and that has had a severe impact on TfL funding. The number of people earning over £100,000 at TfL is at a very high level. There are lots of options available to the mayor to put TfL's finances back on a stable footing, which do not involve extending the congestion charge to North Circular. So right. I think it is highly unlikely that that would ever happen, and I would certainly oppose that.
Okay. I think many people in our community and the whole of Barnet will sleep more easily having heard that reassurance from you. But it's down to the mayor, is that right? Just to be clear, it's down to the mayor.
Yes, it is the mayor's decision. So the changes to the congestion charge that have already been made, and any broadening and expansion and increase in the congestion charge would be a decision for the Mayor of London.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. Obviously, we are in the aftermath of the report that came out, the EHRC report regarding the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn. And of course, that was welcomed by our community. I think all communities welcomed the report and its findings. I think one of the questions that we have for you would be, what measures does the Conservative Party have in place to ensure that the cancerous growth of anti-Semitism that we witnessed in the Labour Party over the last few years is not going to morph itself and find itself occurring in the Conservative Party? In other words, are there measures in place to ensure that things don't develop and this doesn't become an issue?
Well, yes. I mean, it would be completely unacceptable if we were to see the anti-Semitism take root in the Conservative Party in the way that it had in the Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn. That would be completely unacceptable. There's, as far as I can see, no suggestion that that has been the case. But we have a robust complaints system to investigate allegations of any kind of prejudice or inappropriate conduct. That is a very serious process. There was, at least one case in which I was involved, so I know how seriously it is taken. It has a very clear independent element. The party leadership is not in any way involved in that process, has no say in the outcome. So my understanding is that our processes would be compliant with the kind of requirements that a Human Rights Commission report would place on Labour. But I want to be absolutely emphatic that I will always speak out against anti-Semitism and other forms of racism. I have done throughout my time in public office. I wouldn't tolerate it in my own party, just as I would. I don't think it's remotely tolerable in any other political party.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And what would you like to see as a consequence? In other words, after the findings, what's the next step in terms of the consequences for the Labour Party and for Jeremy Corbyn? Should there be legal proceedings, or where do we go from here?
Well, I think there, as far as I know, I think there are some legal proceedings on foot, or that, I mean, it's not entirely clear from the media coverage whether all those proceedings have been settled, but I don't believe they have been. So that's obviously a matter for the individuals concerned. It is, of course, crucial that the Labour Party implements rigorously the requirements of the Human Rights Commission report. And I am troubled by the fact that the leader of the Labour Party and a number of members of his shadow cabinet served at the side of Jeremy Corbyn for so long. I believe that they have a lot to prove to demonstrate that they and their party have truly moved on from this problem, because I feel that they have complicity in what went on, because they enthusiastically served in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet for some years.
Yeah.
And so I think something as serious as this is not resolved with a few press conferences. It's welcome that the Labour leader has expressed contrition. It's welcome that he's expressed a desire to implement the recommendations of the findings of the Human Rights Commission report, but that goes a long way short of actually being able to reassure people that this problem within the Labour Party is over. And the tragic reality is that the hard left have had a problem with anti-Semitism for decades. This is not a recent phenomenon. The only change was that radical left anti-Semitism became more mainstream in the Labour Party. So I think the left wing of politics as a whole has a problem with buying into the kind of conspiracy theories that so often end up with deployment of anti-Semitic tropes. So I think it's a long way before Labour will be genuinely free of the taint of the anti-Semitism we've seen in the last few years.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see. You have a question.
Yeah. Yes. So I know we spoke about lockdown a bit earlier in our conversation, but do you believe that lockdown was absolutely necessary? And can you confirm, I know it's hard to ask you to confirm, but can you confirm that we'll be definitely out of lockdown by the end of this year?
Well, I will certainly be absolutely pressing for us to come out on time on 2nd of December. I think if we were still in this lockdown by the end of the year, it would be, I just don't think it's realistic. I don't think people will do it. You know, during the festive season, to tell people that they can't see their friends and family is just not sustainable. Yeah. So we have to be out of it by the end of the year, and I am determined that we will be out of it by the 2nd of December. So going back to the first question, was the first lockdown justifiable? I think if we hadn't have done it, we would have seen many thousands more people die.
Right.
And I mean, what we're going through at the moment is an illustration. You know, you lock down and then you open up and the virus comes back. So we will, in due course, have a sort of lengthy and painful public inquiry, which will no doubt look back with hindsight to see exactly what was correct or what should have been done, what shouldn't have been done. But virtually every other country in the world with a serious COVID outbreak did have a lockdown of some description. Sweden was more or less the only country that didn't. Yeah. Admittedly, they did pretty well, but they have different demographics. They have different density of population. For example, one of the reasons why we were hit so hard, I think, by COVID in this country is because London is so densely populated and it is just so huge. Yeah. So I find it hard to see how we could have kept the rates of fatality down without some kind of lockdown.
And I totally hear that, and absolutely life trumps everything, you know, and if we could prevent any more deaths, then absolutely lockdown is the way to go. But I'm going to just add a question here ad hoc, you know, working in the mental health field and working with people that are in hospital, and the rules are so rigid. about the one parent in hospital, not allowed no two parents at the same time with children in hospital, or no visitors allowed. And I'm just wondering, was there a way that one could have been more thoughtful on the details? It feels like, especially in the second lockdown, could have been more thought, kind of preventative thought, because I'm really worried about what we're going to be left with come the end of lockdown, come the next couple of months.
Yes, it is. It's just kind of miserable in so many ways for so many people. Separation of, people unable to visit relatives in hospital without sort of the kind of restrictions you're talking about, and also the tragedy of people being separated from their relatives in residential care over, in some instances, over just months and months. So it is taking a really heavy toll. And then one adds in as well the impact of people who didn't go to hospital for their non-COVID treatments during the lockdown period. That will certainly have contributed to a lot of life. I mean, I know the government is, of course, trying to learn lessons from the first lockdown in relation to this one, and I think this one is different.
Okay.
It is. I think there was the NHS is very clearly being asked during this lockdown to do as much as it possibly can to maintain non-COVID treatment. In the first lockdown, it essentially became very, very focused on COVID, and many other treatments were, of course, had to be postponed. And I think there is a real recognition that approach does cost lives as well. So I know that huge efforts are being made in our NHS locally to keep up non-COVID treatment, and though there is a sort of debate about exactly how it's going to work, efforts are also being made to try and enable people to visit relatives in hospital and relatives in care homes as well. Though there are no easy solutions here, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Just as I know we've only got a few minutes more because you have to rush away, but just as a follow-up to that, we all want it to be effective. Can it work with the schools still open and the rampant spread of COVID through the school classes and school years? Are we going to succeed?
We certainly will succeed. The only question is how long it's going to take, whether we end up going through this kind of cycle of locking down, opening up, potentially for some months to come.
Right.
I mean, the hope that we have is, firstly, that treatment gets better, and certainly in this outbreak, the number of people who lose their lives compared to the number of cases is coming down. More people who get this virus are surviving because of improvements in treatment, including dexamethasone, which was the first medically proven treatment for COVID, and that was developed by scientists here in the UK. Secondly, there is the delivery of tests which can be done more or less instantly, and you get a return from within 10 to 20 minutes, and which can be sort of delivered potentially to millions of people week after week after week. And we have a pilot going of that technology in Liverpool. So if we can do that, we can identify with much more accuracy who has got the condition. And thirdly, of course, the scientists are optimistic about a vaccine. Now, I don't think we should pin all our hopes on that, because even if we get it, it won't completely eliminate the disease. Humanity's only ever been able to eliminate totally 2 conditions ever in our history, smallpox and polio. But normally very sort of cautious scientists seem very confident that there will be a number of vaccines which could have a significant effect in giving people resistance to this disease. So those 3 sort of projects, I think should give us hope that this cycle of locking down and then opening up and the disease spreading, for example, through schools, is one that hopefully we will see come to an end very soon.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Theresa, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate that you are shouldering tremendous responsibilities and pressures from all sectors of the community, and we appreciate you taking time out to join our community. And we look forward, please God, to an end of the COVID and you being able to join us in person in our community. One final little question, and that is for you, just as a light-hearted thing. What is it, the one thing that you're missing as a person? Forget being MP. What is it when this is all over? Is there anything that you have missing tremendously through the pandemic?
Well, I suppose, I mean, certainly during the first lockdown, I think the thing I missed was not being able to get my hair cut. I found extremely frustrating. Through this shorter lockdown, of course, the thing that I miss most is being able to spend time with my friends, sort of out and about. And I do hope that, as I said, we are all released from this on the 2nd of December, and hopefully we will see, some real progress in tackling the virus, so we don't find ourselves back in lockdown in a few months' time.
Please God, and I look forward to having you sit next to me again in the synagogue in the not too distant future when we can have services again. So,
well, it would be so lovely to be back with the Woodside Park School again. Very soon, I hope. I really do that. And it's been nice to be able to talk on a virtual format, and I would apologise for the technology glitches at the start. Ever since we had that heavy rain, for some reason, my broadband connection has been rather shaky. So I'm glad we managed to connect up in the end.
Same.
We're
Thank you for coming.
We're delighted. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, we can't give a round of applause, but I want to thank on your behalf the Right Honourable Theresa Villiers, RMP. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you tremendous success. May the Almighty bring success in all your endeavours in helping the whole of the community. Thank you so much, Theresa.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.